Hello and welcome everyone to episode 1 of Second Look Sports Show, brought to you by the Second Look Sports Network. We're pumped to be here with you. If you haven't already had a chance to listen to our Second Look Hockey show that our crew recorded earlier this Monday, December 9th, go ahead and check that out. But for now, I am your host, Alex Mandarino. I am joined by Brandon Brown and Justin Arenburg. We also have Sarah Matt, our producer, behind the glass. She's detailing everything as we go along. We're psyched to be here, like I mentioned. We got a lot of cool stuff to get into. We'll intro sort of like what we're trying to get into with this show, but ultimately, we're just here to bring as many cool, fun, exciting takes on some of the biggest stories that are going on in the sports ecosystem ultimately, and bring a couple of fun segments as we go along. That's enough for me. Let's maybe pass the mic around and introduce ourselves a little bit more, just get to know kind of what our backgrounds are. Brandon, I'm going to toss the mic over to you. What do you got for us today?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I just want to say hey to everybody. Brandon Brown, happy to be here. Right now, interning at Sportsnet 590 The Fan, along with Alex as well. Happy to do that, and we're finishing up our year at Centennial College at sports in the sports journalism post grad. So I'm excited to be joining you guys and starting this venture here at Second Look, and excited to see what we all can do together. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Justin.
Yeah, so just a long story. I mean, this is like I know me and Alex, we did a podcast earlier this year. It was called Set or Healthy Scratches, but we're starting something new here with Second Look, and I believe it's going to be something special. A little bit about me. I'm from Nova Scotia. I moved here about a year ago, actually a year ago in January. And yeah, I'm interning at Sportsnet as well, but on the content factory side of things or web desk, whichever is easier to remember. But yeah, just a lot of excitement coming into this. Always want to have my face or like voice or anything, do as many reps as possible to get known, and that's all this is about. Just trying to show everyone that we have a valid sports opinion in the sports industry.
Love it. We'll give a second, Sarah. I know you're on mute. If you want to throw yourself off, just say hi to the people. If you want to say anything, the floor is yours.
Hey guys, well, yeah, I'm Sarah, like Alex said, and I'll just be kind of behind the scenes, telling these guys what to do. Just kidding. But I'm excited to see what this podcast could be about.
Nice. She's not kidding. We're definitely not running the show here. It's definitely
Hmm.
her. But in terms of myself, we'll go quickly. But yeah, basically, like everyone else here, we're all at Sportsnet. We've kind of had a lucky opportunity to intern there. I'm with Brando, doing some Fan 590 stuff, helping to produce some shows. But yeah, like Justin also mentioned, we're just really excited to kind of all be in the sports industry in some capacity. And, it's exciting to kind of bring some sports content through podcast form. We've had some reps before. And really, we're all over the map in terms of some of our favorite sports, but we're going to try and bring as much energy and enthusiasm as we can, and try and be as unique as we can. So I
Quickly
think,
before we
yeah, get in there.
before we go into it, we gotta let the fans know or the listeners know who our favorite teams are. So then,
Okay.
going forward, there's no like, oh, why is this guy being biased towards this guy or this team? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, set the tone. Justin,
What I,
go start
yeah,
us
that's
off.
it.
All right. I got the Montreal Canadiens, the New England Patriots, and then the two Canadian teams, the Toronto Blue Jays and the Toronto Raptors. And then a little bit of soccer, FC Barcelona.
Damn. Okay. You said two Canadian teams like the Leafs aren't Canada's team. I hope you know that's
They
where you
aren't.
took that.
They aren't.
Okay. Well,
The Montreal Canadiens are Canada's team, so.
that remains to be seen, but I'll take it. Brando, jump in there. Who do you rep here?
Well, you brought them up, Alex. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs for me, man. For pretty much for my entire life, it's been all about the blue and white, and especially when you're in the Toronto area, you have to root for the Maple Leafs, Justin. We're still trying to get you on the train now that you're, up and around the GTA. So we'll try to get you there. But beyond the NHL, for me, it's the Buffalo Bills. Again, kind of more of a local spin, but I've been a big fan of the Bills. Before Josh Allen was around, before they had some playoff success, but now it's really good to see them playing well. And like Justin, it's the Blue Jays, it's the Raptors. When you're talking about the MLB, the NBA, you got to rep your Canadian teams there. So for me, it's all
Lone,
about the local love, right? Sorry,
yeah,
Justin, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say lone Canadian markets. We gotta represent them.
You have
You
to.
gotta. Yeah.
You have
Alex?
to. Yeah, I'd say very similar, Brandon, to you. Ultimately, though, like, yeah, Leafs, Raptors, Jays, all of the main stuff. I also like to support the fantastic San Jose Sharks. They're absolutely dominating the league, lighting them up as of 2018, maybe. As of now, they're definitely not. We're struggling, but, it's a big year. And a lot of changes, weirdly, around the Sharks, but we don't need to get in that anytime soon. And then in terms of football, Los Angeles Chargers, I don't know why I'm so interested in the West Coast teams. But I'm not a Bills fan, but like watching them and the Lions dominate this season is weirdly satisfying. Being so close to the border, I feel like they're two tortured franchises, so it's nice to see them. But yeah, just pumped to kind of get there. So we'll see if this rivalry sets in with the Canadians, with the Leafs. We'll see how this all plays out, even though we're mainly friends here. But we can probably jump right along to some of our main topics. How we're going to kick things off is basically going into some of the bigger topics that are ongoing throughout the sports world. Really, we're not really going to try and focus on one or two leagues. We're going to try and be a little bit more broad with it. And I think the biggest news and information that's kind of dropped in the past week or so are the winter meetings for the MLB. So these are the annual meetings that are hosted by the league every offseason. This year they were held in Dallas from Monday to Wednesday of this current week. But realistically, the real news started 8 or 9 hours prior to that first meeting, I'm sure, on the Monday morning in Dallas with Juan Soto, 26-year-old, to no one's surprise, signing one of the largest deals in MLB history, mainly that 15-year, $765 million deal with the New York Mets, as I mentioned, late Sunday night. So if you woke up Monday morning, you were probably either really enthused or not. So as I mentioned, 26 years old, he'll be 41 when this deal finally ends. Just a crazy concept to basically wake up and go, yeah, every year I'm making. I did not do the conversion. I probably should have.
It's 51 and a half, I believe, million per year.
Let's go with that. It's unbelievable. I saw some of the structure too. I think John Heyman reported some of the structure of what the deal looks like. So award bonuses, 500K for his first MVP, 350K for second. He basically just has all these incredible structures in terms of gaining an MVP throughout that 15-year season. I think he gets luxury suites for home games, 4 premium seats at home, security for himself and his family, and a full no move clause. So I obviously have a bit of notes on it, but I guess initial reactions to when we saw this deal and what did we be surprised really that the Mets kind of were the ones that nabbed him?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the incentives in the deal, also you have to think about there's an opt-out after year 5 in 2029. And if he opts into it, then it goes up to an $805 million contract in total value, which is just insane to think about. But he has financially secured everything imaginable with this contract, and he set himself up in a big way. Remember back in 2021 when he denied a $444 million contract from the Nationals for 14 years, I believe it was 14 or 15 years, I can't remember. And he bet on himself. He 440 million would have been a record-setting deal back then. Now he adds an extra $300 million to that. He just proved why you bet on yourself time and time again. He's one of the best. Well, one of the best. I'm not going to say he is the best because you should have Shohei Ohtani still in the league, but time after time, I don't know if there's another even Shohei Ohtani. I don't know if there's another player at the plate I would rather want in a clutch situation. I get Shohei Ohtani can give you power, but for getting on base percentage, I would want Soto in a high leverage spot over Ohtani. And I just think the Mets went out. Steve Cohen, we know he's going to spend a lot of money. We know this is what he wanted to do for a while. He's building a super team like the Dodgers have for the last how many years. And we're going to see if they're able to actually piece it together on the field. But in terms of actually building a team, they're well on their way to going further than what they did this past season on such a magical run.
Yeah, Justin, I think you hit the nail on the head with the what their team is going to look like and how they're going to piece it all together. Because especially with him moving now from the AL to the NL, from the Yankees to the Mets, obviously, the kind of it feels like the power kind of struggle in the MLB is maybe shifting, and the Dodgers had kind of a stranglehold on the NL, and now the Mets kind of made their move a little bit this year or this in the playoffs, and now they might just take that next step with Soto. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see kind of how the dynamics of that conference with the Dodgers, who've kind of been the kings of spending money, of bringing in all-star players. Obviously, weren't at the top of the list, it seems, for Soto. It seemed like he had kind of other ideas in terms of whether that was staying around the New York area or the Dodgers perhaps were offering deferred money, which I heard was potentially not something Soto was interested in. So it's going to be just an incredible offseason. I'll say we just had American Thanksgiving up here in Canada. Obviously, we don't celebrate that, but there's that saying that Americans do Thanksgiving right. Well, I think the MLB does the offseason right. It seems like they just have these incredibly high talent, but also high potential earners in terms of the cream of the crop makes so much money compared to some of the other deals we might see this offseason. So I think it was incredibly exciting to see how it all played out, and I'm just incredibly excited to see how next season actually ends up and where some of the other big fish end up landing.
Yeah, I'm curious too. All obviously really good points, and it was interesting to kind of see how this offseason, obviously Soto set the market. It was very similar last year to an Ohtani situation in a number of ways. He goes from the Angels to the Dodgers, so basically cross town. And then you see the same thing with Juan Soto. I do feel like Juan Soto, mainly because of the fans of New York, he's going to get way more hate than Angels fans are going to give Ohtani. That's an estimation, but I can't wait for those Subway series. I really wish, I really hope, just for I kind of don't hope this, but it would be cool to see them, the Yankees and Mets, actually reach the finals this year, just to see the culmination of how this goes if a World Series were to kind of end up between these two teams. Did anyone watch or see any of his press conference today? I know Juan Soto spoke to the media for the first time.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it. I didn't really get to hear how much or what he actually said. I did see the jersey presentation. He looked like a natural fit inside that jersey.
He looked good.
One thing I'm very curious to know though is how much he paid Brett Batty for number 22. We gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
I think I heard Alex. Sorry, Justin. I heard Alex say I think there were some crazy stipulations in his contract. I think that was in his contract. I don't know that he had to go to Beatty and ask him. I'm pretty sure the organization said, "Hey, yeah, we'll give you the number." Like that, it maybe wasn't even talked about. They just said, "Here, that's part of it." So
he's got to give Beatty a gift. You have to get him a gift,
maybe 50 mil. He's got enough to spare. You could probably give him whatever you want, right? He's licking his lips. Yeah, crazy.
I was gonna add to your Yankees point. I've just seen over the last 3 days, Yankees Twitter is going ballistic, and then in the last 48 hours. They've gone to coping, and they've just said this guy is defensive liability in right field. It's actually good that we lost him. It's really good. He's made all these errors. We don't want him in these high leverage situations. Just admit it. You guys lost at your own game. You guys used to be the bullies that had all the money, and now that is not the case anymore, as Steve Cohen has just proven once again. And also, you should have just gave him a family suite. Apparently, he said, I did hear this actually. He said money is good, but he really cared about his family during the process. Why didn't the Yankees just offer him a family suite for his whole family? I don't know. But Yankees fans definitely lost out, and the Yankees organization definitely lost out on a generational talent.
Yeah. I know, just to go back on that, because you're discussing the Yankees, and obviously the fans are upset, rightfully so, but Soto made his point early on. I think it's more upsetting when you look at some of the numbers of the Yankees offered 1 year more, but 5 mil less, and he goes, "No, I'm going across town," right? So that's upsetting. he also mentioned, and obviously this is like, it's blown out of proportion, but it just happened hours ago. In the press conference, there wasn't much there. It was like 20 minutes long. He answered 5 or 6 questions. He spoke a lot of English, which I think probably means a lot. Just the fact like he's trying for some of the fans in New York. Ultimately, I think there's a lot of Spanish speakers in New York. So either way, I think it's nice to see them bring a Dominican Republic based player there as well. But he was asked if he spoke to any of his Yankees teammates, and his answer was, I haven't talked to any of those guys. We talked to them through the playoffs and in the end of the playoffs. But after that, amid this process, I haven't talked to any of those guys, which to me is super surprising. Mainly in that, like, that just kind of indicates that the Yankees brass didn't bring any players in maybe during their pitch. To my understanding, I don't believe the Jays brought Vladdy into the pitch either. So it's not the strangest thing in the world, but I'm just kind of surprised that he didn't speak to any players.
You're thinking like Aaron Judge would at least like send a text saying, "Hey, we want you to stay. It's the captain of the team. Like, you'd want him to stay." Like, no, like if that is the case, like that to me is mind-boggling, because like this is a once in a generational talent and you're not even gonna reach out. Like, I don't think it's on Juan Soto to reach out and say, "Hey, why do you want me to stay in with the Yankees?" Like, it should be on the Yankees players to reach out to Juan Soto and say, "We want you here. We believe in you." Aaron Boone should have at least, like, I know Aaron Boone talked to him, but like Aaron Boone should have at least told Aaron Judge, "Hey, maybe send this guy a text." I don't know. Or Garrett Cole, like just someone. Now, before we move on, I just wanted to make one comparison. This whole year has been basically Kawhi of 2019. But unlike Kawhi of 2019, Toronto actually got the chip at the end of it. The Yankees made it to the finals, but no, they didn't get any chip out of it. And I think that's what makes this worse for Yankees fans. If they would have won the championship like Toronto did with Kawhi and then he leaves, so what? Oh, well. Like, you wish you would have signed him or re-signed him, but you didn't. It's okay. At least you got the championship. Yankees, they can't even hold their hat on that because they lost in the final and then you lose out on a generational talent. That's the comparison I'm taking away from this year with Juan Soto.
Yeah, agreed. Any more thoughts, Brando, on your side here?
I would agree. I mean, as he wasn't there very long either, so like the comparison rings true in that regard as well. So I think that is a really good point. I would the one thing, like you said, is just that they didn't win. If there was a situation where somehow Shohei had gotten traded to the Dodgers or something, and then he was a free agent this year, like that might have been incredibly, entertaining to watch play out as well. Obviously, we had the crazy scenario that happened last offseason anyway, but that's a great point. I never even thought of that. Yeah.
And we'll move on in this sense to the team that did not get the big fish in Juan Soto outside of New York, the hometown Blue Jays. It never really was the biggest optimistic approach that I think fans took that he was going to land here. But the Jays did make moves. I believe it was yesterday. They acquired second baseman Andreas Gimenez from the Cleveland Guardians. 26 years old, same age as Juan Soto. Doesn't have the same offensive prowess as him. 49 home runs over 5 seasons with the Guardians. He is in his second year I believe he just finished his second year of a $106.5 million deal. So he's still at 5 years under team control after this, plus a team option, I believe, in 2030. The Jays also picked up in the same deal right-handed pitcher Nick Sandlin, and they sent Spencer Horwitz and minor leaguer Nick Mitchell to the Guardians. Spencer Horwitz has since been sent to the Pirates. Good sort of utility guy. It's sad to see him go, but we got in what people are telling me and what I've heard, the infield Varsho, and that this guy's a dominant Gold Glove winner and is going to probably strengthen that infield from a defensive perspective. Not necessarily the power hitter that the Jays, I think, were looking to acquire. Not that they're done by any stretch. We talked a little bit about this earlier on. We had a meeting a few nights ago, guys. Like, are we kind of pumped about this, or does this kind of signal more moves to come?
I mean, I think for me, you look at baseball in sort of a positional hierarchy, and I think second base is a very important one, and it's something that they've now shored up. I know Jimenez is signed, I believe, till 2029, and then I think there's an option after that. So that was good. It's really good to see them, shore up a position of importance, I would say, especially on the defensive side. But yeah, you're not going to see kind of what I think most people thought the Jays were going to be searching for in terms of, a bat is some power. But Jimenez, he's been a pretty respectable hitter, I believe, in the AL MVP conversation. Got some votes, I think, a couple of years ago. So it's always good to bring in good players, and I think people were maybe disappointed to see Horwitz go, but you got to kind of give up something to get something, and I think Sandlin is going a little bit underappreciated in this deal too. I think he could be a guy who's going to toss some innings for the Jays this year, and has been pretty effective, I think, with Cleveland. And the two of these guys are part of a team that has had some success in the playoffs, and you just want to keep bringing in guys that help the team. But the Varsho comparison is a good one too. I think. Unless something changes, you're going to see Jimenez get on base a little bit, but you're not going to see him, hit too many doubles or triples or home runs. You're going to see kind of more of the singles or getting on base and maybe stealing something, which is something the Jays lack. But that's kind of where it lands for me, at least.
Oh, it's just, what does Jimenez bring to this team that they don't already have? Like, that's like the real question for me. You are already strong up the middle. You just blocked Will Wagner's future in the infield, like playing big innings this year if he was going to take a step because he can't play second base now. Jimenez is there now, and he's not going to play first with Vladdy's there. He might play third, but like he doesn't usually play third, so why would you ever put him there? The it's just the really like weird part to me, and I'm not like in depth or in the weeds, I would say, like always knowing every savant stat about every player, like maybe a couple of our classmates do. But I've talked to a couple of people in the last couple of days about this and the salary. Why, like, taking on Jimenez's salary, where he's going to be making 18.6 or somewhere, it's either 18.6 or 20 million this year. Why would you want to do that? Like, I don't get that because you needed a power bat. You could have used that $20 million on getting someone like Santander, who actually showed a lot of power this year. And I just don't understand. You put yourself in a situation now where if you don't want to spend more than the $241 million that has been reported, that then you go into the next tax bracket and then you have to pay more, then why would you leave yourself with $13 million to work with? That part to me makes no sense because this team needed offense. Now, they've been reported to be in on Corbin Burns. If they go get Corbin Burns, obviously they're going to have to be over the $241 million threshold. I'm assuming, unless they're giving him deferred money, that it's not going against their salary this year. But it's just the move to me, like the player himself. I'm not knocking the player himself. It's just the move with all the salary just doesn't make sense to me because, like, what does he do for your team that you didn't already have? We've already seen you try the defensive mode. It ended up last in the AL East. Like I don't get what Jimenez brings to this team that we don't already have.
Yeah, I get that. And so I was thinking about that and, kind of like listening to different opinions on it. Sorry, I should speak it to the mic. I shouldn't speak into my hand here, boys. I'm wondering if this means that they're not confident that Bo can get re-signed, because do you move Jimenez to shortstop where we've seen Bo struggle in the past? Now, Bo's bat's way different. I'm not arguing that the offensive side of things is the same. But you talk about Will Wagner. You still have Davis Schneider for this year at a pretty cheap amount, and he's got a lot of power and at least a great contact hitter. So do you move Jimenez to the shortstop position, shore up that defensively? And it's brutal, but do you trade Bo Bichette? And do you just say, listen, we don't know if we can hang on to this guy. We might be in the midst of, we don't know if we're going to get Vladdy. We don't, and I'm talking as the Jays front office, we don't know if we're going to get Vladdy. We don't know if Bo's going to want to stay. Do we just kind of, is this our backup plan? I don't know if that's the case whatsoever, but it's maybe food for thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely reeks a little bit of some desperation. I think it's kind of, the timing is not coincidental. I think that as soon as They obviously are out on Soto now. They're making a trade. They're not, signing another big fish. They're making a trade. They're going out of their way to bring players in from another organization, and whether they consider the two players an upgrade on what they had with Horwitz, I think that remains to be seen. But it's definitely a signal that they're trying to do stuff. But I don't know. I think it's encouraging to see them try to do different things, but I don't believe that they'll be in on a Burns. I don't believe that they'll be. I don't even know that they can really afford to bring in a big bat with kind of what's happening around some of the players that are available. So I think they're just, as Alex said, maybe this is a backup plan. They're just going to try to bring in pieces and then kind of try to figure out the rest as we get through the offseason or into next season.
We'll have to keep an eye on all of this for sure. I know Ben Nicholson-Smith of Sportsnet did write an article today about the Jays being like interested in kind of pitching in on Roki Sasaka, 23-year-old Japanese pitcher, dominant fastball from what I'm reading. And apparently like he's a very kind of dry sense of humor, like doesn't like to say much to the media, doesn't like to listen to too much talking from what his agent has to say. So BNS was kind of outlining how the Jays should pitch him. It might still be a long shot, but I think it's less of a concern as Ohtani was to being closer to home. He obviously didn't move outside of the state of California. Whereas I think Sasaka is a little bit more prone to saying, like, I don't mind going outside as long as I have a direct flight to Japan if necessary. So I'd be interested to see if that changes things, because I think he has to sign a minor league deal for about max $7.5 million. So he's going to be an extremely cheap option, which is why I think a lot of teams are really interested in him. So I think, and he's, like I said, 23. So if that is in any capacity, like available, and the Jays lock him in, I think we're having a different conversation down the line. So that'd be kind of a fun piece. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. So what we're going to do is transition over to a different sport here and talk about, we talked about some greats in the sport so far currently, but we'll also talk about a great, and Justin knows all about this lad here, Bill Belichick. Been in the news recently for like possibly getting involved into head coaching once again, but not in the NFL in this particular case. He's taking a stab at the NCAA on the football side, and he is taking the UNC, University of North Carolina Tar Heels head coaching job. He agreed to a 5-year deal, still pending University Board of Trustees and Board of Governors, but it's all but locked in. His father, Bill Belichick's dad, Steve, was an assistant football coach for the Tar Heels back in the 50s. So he has a little bit of like understanding of the school from way back then. I should say it is his first step into the college realm. And UNC hasn't actually won an ACC title since 1980. So this could really step things up. Was this sort of a surprise to anybody that he made this move after the media and after kind of entertaining some coaching positions in the NFL last year?
Personally, no. Just because it seemed like this year, and the reason he did this, he wasn't generating any interest from NHL or NFL teams in the 2025 cycle. And I don't think if he knew he wasn't getting interest in the cycle, then he knew he had to go take a job somewhere else if he wanted to coach. And I think this is another chance not another chance, but a chance for him to then prove himself again. I don't know why he has to prove himself, but it feels that way if you're not going to even be in the cycle for an NFL head coach. And during his presser on Thursday, I mean, he has had ties through his father to UNC for basically a century now. It's like 85 years, but like close to a century of just UNC football. And he laughed at his presser on Thursday and said, yeah, the first words I think I ever said was beat Duke. That's what my father told me. And that stuff's just really funny. They even had the cutoff sleeves, the overshirt, or I forget what they're actually called. But yeah, it was a nice little touch to everything. I thought it was really well done, the whole presser. He talked for so long about UNC and what his vision is and stuff like that. But overall, I think this is something that is a new challenge for him, working in a college system that is completely different than the NFL. I know that there's a little bit of a salary cap now with NIL money, but it's still completely different than from the NFL. You have to go out and recruit your own players from high school and stuff. So I'm excited to see what the challenge or what he does with the challenge. I know we're not betting, but like I did see the win total already for next year went up to 6.5 for
Okay.
UNC, and that's pretty respectful for like just naming Bill Belichick your head coach with a team that didn't really do anything this year.
Well, I think they won 6 games, so I think that like you're right. They're people are projecting based on nothing that they'll be better, but I think that it was definitely interesting. Once the shock of him just stepping away from the NFL kind of wore off, you're like, oh, this is actually a very beautiful story. Like him going back to kind of honor his
Hmm.
almost his family legacy, right? So it's interesting, and some of the stories that came out around how the negotiations may have gone between him and the school, and what he presented and what the plan after his contract may look like. So I think it's a really nice story, and it is kind of concerning. I think that some of these owners in the NFL are staying away from a guy who won so many championships with even though with the Patriots as a head coach, but just having him in the building, I feel like is something that you might want to have. But I get the kind of fear around what's gone on there, and some of the maybe media that you'd see if you bring him in. But
I think
yeah, it was a great story. Yeah,
I think it's also to do with the fact like he wants control. He wants
definitely.
control, and at
Oh yeah.
72 years old, I don't think an NFL team wants to give up that kind of control. So I think that has a big factor in the fact that he's not even attempting to go for an NHL or NFL coaching job this offseason.
I'd love to see him in the NHL. That'd be unbelievable.
Behind the
Um,
bench.
I think we could probably dive into a little bit more of this. So maybe we'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll just kind of wrap this conversation up. But we'll take a quick break, and on the other side, we'll chat one coach returning to a new team. We have a team player in the NHL returning from absence on the Vancouver Canucks. More on the other side. Welcome back to the first episode of the Second Look Sports Show. Pumped to be with you here again. Last we were discussing prior to our break was Bill Belichick's first coaching job since leaving the Patriots in 2023, and he's joining the UNC Tar Heels in the NCAA. I think one point I just wanted to stress before we move on, because I think we talked a little bit about it, is like Belichick is 72 years old. He's only a year younger than Mac Brown, who the Tar Heels fired at the end of the season.
Whoa.
And
They didn't fire him. He just
it
walked away.
it was one of those things though where it's probably like, all right, like I think
Oh,
this is
100%.
probably mutually good.
100%. 100%.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things though where like you touched on it a little bit, Justin, in terms of like the new NIL and obviously recruiting, which is so new to him. So I think that's going to be a really interesting sort of development as to whether this works, but also he's done media now. Like within the past year and a
Hmm.
bit, he's been on Inside the NFL, the Manning cast, like Pat McAfee, he does pretty often, Sirius XM, and he's been a little bit more like bubbly, not bubbly, he's never been bubbly, but he like smiles and he like actually acknowledges people. So I just wonder if he's going to be able to go back to this his surly demeanor, and like with the media, everyone's going to be like, dude, this is an act. Like you were yourself when you were in the media. I wonder if he's going to have the same pull with his players of being like, I'm the captain now, when everyone is seen his true colors. I don't know if you guys think about like what he's going to impact the team like that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, does a leopard change its stripes? I don't know. Bill Belichick put on a good
So hold on. Does a leopard have stripes? Am I crazy?
yeah, it
I thought a
does.
leopard has spots.
Producer Sarah,
The
does a leopard?
Yeah, a little
cheetah.
fact check.
Yeah.
Leopards have spots. Nice try. I think you're thinking of a
Oh, let's
zebra with the
go.
stripes or a tiger.
Mm, mm,
Nothing. You can't get
Yeah.
away with anything here. But I get it, Justin. I just wanted to
okay.
make sure we're on the same page. I'm
Does a
with you. I'm
leopard
with you.
change its spots? Okay.
It does
Okay.
not. It does not.
Okay. Well, anyway, Bill Belichick put on a good act for the last year
Mhm.
and a half in the media. And I think he's gonna should go back to the same. And by the way, you're forgetting the biggest piece with this. You're forgetting his general manager, Michael Lombardi of the
Yes.
Lombardi line of Vason, who's done a betting show for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So He definitely knows all the numbers about taking which way the ball's gonna go, and do you take the over on UNC? But uh, I think from Bill Belichick's perspective, he's going to be the same old Bill that we've always seen. Um, he's gonna be very stone cold on the sidelines. The only thing I think that's gonna be different is I think talking to media now, he might be a little bit different in the sense of
Hmm.
I think he understands a little bit more about how media and especially sports media works and why they do the things or we do the things that we do. So I think that he'll have a little better understanding and a little more leniency towards reporters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will definitely help him. But I think in terms of the players and the personnel, like it was rumored he was meeting with his potential coaches, during the NFL season. He's even if he was in the media, he was never fully out of the football. I think once he gets into that first practice or the first, workout scenario, I think Coach Belichick will kind of come out and will show his true colors or spots or stripes or whatever you want to say. He's going to feel that whatever the juices are once he gets back into the facility. I think it's going to be interesting to see what we hear, what we see of him once we kind of get into the next year's football season and how his personality might shift or what. It's going to be so much fun, I think. And the college is a little different than the NFL. I think some of the coaches obviously have a little bit more power, probably with the media as well. So it's going to be like he may be able to actually facilitate some interesting stuff. So it's really going to be really fun to see.
We
Definitely gonna be
need
fun.
We need Nick Saban back in college football now. Just give us Bill Belichick versus Nick Saban one game,
Oh yeah.
and Nick Saban just go take over. Just say, Kalen, become my assistant head coach because you failed us the first year. You didn't even get us to the 12-team playoff for the inaugural one, and we've been in how many 4-team playoffs over the course of my career. You take a back seat, you become the offensive coordinator, and you learn under me, and then you can have the keys to the kingdom back.
Sure.
But just give us Saban versus Belichick.
Well, I do kind
I
of
would love
have a
that.
question for you guys, like very quickly. I know, like it's not
Yeah.
Saban related, but there's been a lot of talk about if this doesn't work, could we see him back in the NFL? What if it does work? Do you think in a couple of years maybe there's a potential where he actually ends up at a bigger football school maybe and actually kind of not becomes like a Saban? But you don't think there's any chance he has success? Not that he moves, but do you guys think that he will have any sort of success? Will he beat the wins, betting line? Will he get to an ACC championship? What do you guys think is kind of
Huh.
the direction this is headed? Like,
First year he's gonna go 9-3.
All right, hold on.
but
What
it's
were your Patriots take this year, Justin? Didn't you say they're gonna win
The
like 11
10
games?
no, 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 10-7, ten and
All right.
seven.
So
But
so let's
listen,
be real.
But that's to my point.
the
Then what? He's just going to stay there and like
I
continue unless he
Yeah.
can get better. Like, what if he goes and gets to? I guess unless he wins a national championship, which is probably very very unlikely. I
but
guess
the
there he
ACC
might as well stay there. But
the ACC is not that good, guys. Like you
Right.
got to remember, like Clemson is not that good right now. They're like SMU is the best team in that division. That I know they lost to Clemson, but it
Hmm.
wasn't like SMU couldn't beat them. They came back on them. They just lost on a walk-off field goal. They had all the momentum. Listen, if SMU played their best 4 quarters of football and Clemson played their best 4 quarters of football, it would have been a cakewalk for SMU, in my opinion. I just think the ACC is not strong at all, and
Yeah, it's not.
UNC has a chance to even go to the championship game of the ACC next year, just because you're gonna have players now that just want to come because of Bill Belichick. And he said it's gonna be like an NFL factory where he just wants to develop guys to get them to the NFL. And I think guys will want that. Guys want to go to the next level. So I think that what you're saying is like if he gets success there, will he leave? I don't think he is because this is where his father coached. And I don't think you would want to leave a family tie like that and like the heritage there that he's had with us, like UNC from a very from a young boy. Like I just I think you like the success will come It's just, will it be sustained or will it be a one-off where we just see him be good for 1 year, kind of like the late Bill Walsh, who was good in Stanford his first year back, but then kind of fell off after this first year of success.
It'll be interesting for sure. I'm glad Nick Saban was brought up, only in the sense that he retired in this, like, from the perspective of like, I'm not understanding this anymore. There's too much NIL investment. There's too much transfer portal. Like, I can't deal with this, because if you're going to be a coach like Bill Belichick and you're going to ream guys out, guys going to go, all right, like, I'm just going to leave next year. Like the transfer portal kind of forces coaches to be a little bit more player coach friendly. And I just don't know if Bill's going to be able to kind of manage that within a year. The whole thing is, I think he's only 14 wins away from the NFL record over Shula. So I'm wondering if, like, in the back of his mind, he is 72. Like, is that something in his future, is something he's thinking about? I mean, if it were me, it's like, okay, if I can get any NFL job, and I'm sure teams are lining up for him, maybe not lining up, but I'm sure that the Jaguars job was his if he really was interested in it. Like, it's sort of one of those things where I know it's just to chase a record, but it's the winningest NFL coach. Like, you're number one, you're not like two that you're going for. So I would just be surprised if he doesn't find his way back in the NFL, but he is 72. So I can also see him just stepping away after maybe a couple of years at this ACC gig. But yeah, I don't know.
I just, to wrap up, I agree with that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that you're gonna have to, like, but I also see him, the more I'm thinking about this, he's got 6 Super Bowl rings. He is, I think he knows, like, everyone always says, like, I'm not the greatest, but I think he knows, like, everyone kind of looks at him as the greatest football coach of all time, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter about the wins. And that's something I've been thinking about. Like, does the record really matter at the end of the day if you're already the best head coach, or looked upon as the greatest head coach in NFL history? So I'm on the boat of your side, Alex. I think he does want that record, but at the same time, I'm also thinking in the back of my mind, does he actually want that record? That's just my thought right now.
Yeah, it's fair. It's a very fair question. I feel like he's accomplished enough that you could probably let that one slide, but we won't know until we kind of see his first few games at least.
Hmm.
So we'll wrap up with a quick one here, just in terms of the biggest stories. I think we're all big NHL fans, and it's sort of a feel good story in a sense to see JT Miller of the Vancouver Canucks return after a 10-game absence. And it's an unknown reason as to why he left the team. I think a lot of speculation was it was literally just like he was mentally exhausted. He's a very emotional guy. You've seen a lot of that in the media in the past, and he's a leader on the team. It seems that he's butted heads with a couple of teammates. It's sort of been reported, like, here and there, that him and Elias Pettersson don't really get along. This is all things that are speculation. I don't want to report anything in particular, but he's a pretty durable forward. In the past 3 years, he's only missed 4 games, which is pretty incredible. So I guess the only question I have, and this is just something I was thinking of, as Leafs fans, or at least Justin, you're in Toronto, so you hear a lot of this discussion of Austin Matthews when he was out with sort of an undisclosed injury. The biggest narrative was, you have to tell the media. You're the basically top 3 paid player in the NHL. You're in the biggest market in Canada and in pretty much the NHL from a hockey perspective. You owe it to the fans to tell us what's wrong. Do we feel the same way about JT Miller, in the sense that he came out in his press conference today and he said, first and foremost, I'm not discussing what's going on here. I know you're going to ask, but I will not be talking about why I wasn't with the team. So do we think that he should have an obligation to tell the team? Or in this case, do we feel like it's probably fine to respect his privacy and let him just go about his day?
Did you say, you said something at the beginning and then you said
Sure.
the team at the end. So which are you saying, like, tell the media or tell the team? Because I think that's two
Sorry,
totally.
I'll clarify. Yeah, the team, I'm sure, knows. Like, I'm sure they know. I think it's more fans and media to be like, hey, just for sake of argument, like, I'm back, and it's not
Yep.
like a lingering thing. I guess with an injury, it's different because injuries can linger, and so it's probably good to know when Matthews goes to Germany and figures that out. But I'm just curious, kind of, if you guys have thoughts as to whether he owes the fans and the media this information, or whether he could probably just go by and play.
I'll let you go first, Brandon. I've already answered a couple of them
No, no,
first.
you're
So
good, man. I think it's with these two scenarios, I think they are different. I think you can say yes, I think it's fair to say I'd like to know when Austin Matthews is injured and what's going on there. Obviously there are some, rules in terms of they do have to report injuries in some manner. Now we get a lot of upper body, lower body. It's not necessarily clear as sometimes of what a guy has or what he doesn't have. I think with the JT Miller situation, it wasn't so much an injury as it was something more personal. And I think when it comes to personal situations, yes, we may want to know and we may want to speculate, but I think it's always best to just err on the side of caution when it comes to the player and his, whether it's mental health or physical
Mhm.
health or family. Like, you just want to make sure that he's okay. I did see his conversation with the media today in the scrum, and yeah, it was good to see him kind of saying, I'm not going to answer about this. We're going to just move forward. I'm excited to get back with the team. So I think, to your point, Alex, I think it's good to see that kind of emotion is still. He doesn't seem down or too conflicted by anything that was going on. So I think it was good to see, and I think hopefully we'll see him get back to the level that we've seen. The Canucks are, for me at least, one of the still surprises of the year with all the injuries and problems that they've had so far. That they're still kind of pushing and look like they could be a playoff team in the Pacific. So yeah, it was just good to see, and I think we'll see them maybe take another step forward too with Demko back and now possibly a full forward lineup.
listen, I think one thing is for certain, the NHL does not do a great job on injury updates. Like compared to other leagues, like we see the NFL, you know what the guy's eating for breakfast. Like it's completely different in the NHL. And I'm gonna be curious to see like over the next couple of years with betting and stuff if that increases because like for a better, I'm just putting this out there. Like I
Mhm.
know I've heard this before. Do sportsbooks not want to push the NHL to give more time for injury updates? Because if a better makes a bet right before a game based on the fact that you think this guy's gonna play and then he just doesn't play, that completely changes if you want to bet that game or not. And I think for JT's thing, this is completely different. I think that Matthews thing is a different thing in its own. I think that what I just said, like, needs to be a conversation for the future
Mhm.
for the NHL. But for JT, I think yes, people like to gossip. People like to know, ooh, what did Jane say the other day or whatever, whoever. Like you'd always gossip on the playground when you're growing up. It's the same thing you want to know, but at the end of the day, if it's a private matter, that should be respected for JT. And if he wants to tell someone, or if he feels obligated to tell someone that, or willing enough to tell someone, then that's okay. Then let him
Yeah.
do it. But I don't think he should be forced by anyone, especially the media, to come out and say, "Hey, I've been away for a personal reason. Now I have to tell you why I've been gone."
Yeah, that's fair. No, I tend to agree with you guys. I think it's just such a slippery slope when like these situations occur because it's whether it's a personal matter. And I'm so glad to see JT back. We should say we're recording this on Thursday evening. This will be out for all the media or for the media and fans and listeners on Friday.
Yep.
All the media that's listening, we're so pumped to have you here. But
Um,
JT, and obviously this isn't the case, but you just wonder if players to avoid this kind of scrutiny are injured, but instead they would just go like, "Hey, I'm just gonna be away for like unknown reasons," and then they avoid that conversation of what injury is it. In this case, it's obviously like not true, and JT clearly, whatever reason, he has his full and understanding. Like we understand why you would want to maybe keep something private if it's not injury related, and by no means should he say anything. But I guess it just causes one of those conversations of like and like you said, Justin, how are injuries handled moving forward? I think with the sports book thing, it's a very fair point. But from what I hear and just from what I'm reading and things like that, like the NHL is so low on the priority of sports books because it's not even near the amount of money bet compared
yeah,
to like other leagues that it's going to have to take one of these major sports books who start to get maybe more interaction and engagement through the NHL to force the league to say, you got to start reporting these like an hour and a half before the game like the NFL does. The NFL only has mainly Sunday, so it's a lot easier rather than 3 or 4 games a week. But it is going to be probably a conversation that we might have to address in future shows. So yeah, just an interesting thought on that point for sure. Now we can. Sorry, Brando, get into it.
No, I was just going to say one more. I just have one more point or one more thought actually just popped in my head because I don't know the specifics, but there is like I think on the betting point, like I think the NHL, teams are required to put in who's active, who's not before obviously a certain point before the game begins. But I think to your point, Justin, for the fans, like a classic case kind of is occurring again in Toronto where Jake McCabe is back in the lineup for the Maple Leafs, but he was, day to day for, quite some time and was considered, almost back and then not back. If you're a fan and, you go back to the Austin Matthews and you want to go buy a ticket to a game and you don't know if he's in or not, like you can't really determine how you're going to spend your money based on, there's no reports or you're getting very limited information about when he may be back. Like there's a ton of things to consider in that area, but I think in terms of betting, I think it's okay for now. I would just be more concerned if it gets more, kind of shrouded in the future as well.
Yeah, no, it's all fair. Like it's going to be a really unique landscape moving forward with obviously like Austin Matthews kind of setting the tone in terms of injuries and being in that, like we said, the major market in the Leafs and this whole scrutiny of him being one of the better players. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that and obviously probably do a lot more conversation in the future. But we're going to move on. Go ahead, Jutt.
It's team to teams too in the NHL for this injury thing. Because you saw how the Oilers handled McDavid earlier in the year when he was going to be out. They announced it literally the day after he's going to be out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the day that he's going to return, they announce it at 12 o'clock when the game's not till 10 o'clock that night. Like it's team by team basis. I feel like some teams, they don't want to give away the information. Well, some teams are like, it's going to happen later today, so I might as well just tell you anyway. Like, it's no big deal. Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, valid. It's a valid. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out here. We're going to jump into one of our first of 2 segments tonight. The first segment we're going to dive into is called Taking a Second Look. The idea here, guys, is obviously to kind of do a double take on a team that maybe is either flown under the radar or just something that maybe we should keep an eye on as fans in the sports industry. It doesn't have to be a specific sport. And to kind of give them a second look as to maybe they'll be making noise in the future. Maybe there's a reason why we should be focusing on a team that's kind of not necessarily getting as much love as they should deserve to. So maybe Justin, why don't we throw to you first? Who are you taking a second look at this week?
I'm taking a second look at the Oshawa Generals this week.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
They just fired their head coach, Steve O'Rourke, who was 18-10-1-1 and was second place in the Eastern Conference. Very shocking to me, or very interesting, that you would fire your head coach, which in that position, which leads me to believe that there is something behind the scenes that maybe will come out in the next week or so. I don't know what has happened. It kind of goes back to the Bucks situation of last year. I believe it was last year or 2 years ago, where you're coaching a great record, well above any in a playoff position, and you randomly get fired. And they had a massive win over the London Knights last Friday night. The 5-2 win when Beckett Seneca scored an unreal highlight reel goal using his feet as soccer cleats, basically, and then going top shelf over the London Knights goalie, beating Sam Dickinson, your defenseman. But it's really interesting to me that you would make this move. So over the next week, I'm going to be taking a second look at this story.
All right, I like it. I like that a lot. Yeah, it does remind me of the Bucks last year, and bringing in Rivers. So we'll see how that plays out for that team. Brandon, who do you got for us today?
Yeah, so I'm actually looking at an NBA team myself. It's the Houston Rockets. I'm taking a second look at it. This week we've got the NBA Cup going on, and the Rockets have not, in the past few seasons, let's say, they've been one of the worst teams in the NBA. But that's changing. They've got a winning record this year, and they're heading to the semifinals in the NBA Cup in Vegas after beating the Golden State Warriors, a team that they had not beaten since 2020. So almost 5 years it seems like there. So it's just one of those teams that's finally starting to make its way into the upper half of the league, and especially in a crowded Western Conference. So I'm excited to see kind of how they project, not just in the NBA Cup. I don't necessarily expect them to win, but it's great to see them playing well. And I think as we get to the end, through the end of the season, I think they could be an interesting team in the playoffs as well. So I think I'll certainly be watching as the NBA Cup goes on. I've a little sneak preview too of my next segment as well, but it'll be a lot of fun. And I think the Rockets have surprised me for sure. And I think for that reason, I'm going to be, keeping a second look on them.
Okay, I like it. Their defense is like pretty dominant from my understanding. So defense does win championships. They remind me a little of like the Pacers of last year, like pretty solid team, like outside of Halliburton, not like the most flashiest Miles Turner, like they have some decent players, but they went to the finals last year. Pretty cool to see that. So the Rockets have that opportunity coming up soon. I will stick with hockey, a bit of a hockey sandwich here, but I am going to head to the NHL. I'm going to take a second look at the Colorado Avalanche. A lot of changes in that organization over the past couple of weeks. You got Valerie Nichushkin, who returns from stage 3 of the player assistance program. He had a 6-month suspension. So he's back, obviously hoping for his sake and for the team's sake, that he stays this time around. I think it's his second time in the program. He returned November 15th. He has played 13 games. He has 7 goals, 11 points. Guy literally did not miss a step. He's completely dominant. I don't get what the Russian gas is over there, but he's on it, clearly. And the Avs are 8-5 since his return. I think they have like 3 or 4 wins in their past 4 or 5, like really dominant as of late to set the tone. And that's not only their biggest move. They acquired some of the Wood brothers. So Scott Wedgwood from the Nashville Predators, and they brought in Mackenzie Blackwood of my San Jose Sharks. Wedgwood, I haven't followed as much this season. I know Nashville struggled early on, but him, since he's been brought in, he's played 4 games. He's a .944 save percentage. He's won 3 of the 4 with the Avs. Blackwood is yet to play yet. I think they're playing Utah tonight, but Blackwood's still out. I guess they're probably getting him acclimated, maybe like moving him around and things like that. He has a .911 save percentage, and he has 1 shutout this season with a pretty tough Sharks team. They're fun to watch, but defensively, they could probably use a little bit more structure. And he's kind of a guy that likes to get a lot of shots on him, similar to like a John Gibson, I like to compare him to. Sort of a guy that is better when he gets 35, 40 shots on him. Now, he's had some stinkers this year, but again, the San Jose defense isn't necessarily the best in the league. So I'm interested to see with their like improved tandem in net. They still have Nathan McKinnon, who's an absolute killer. You talk about guys like Makar and obviously Rantanen having a pretty solid year in a contract season. So look out for them. I think they're going to be pretty dominant this year. So we'll have to see how that goes. I'm taking a second look for them. And then we'll finish off. I know next week, folks, we're in a little long. We're getting real excited. We're getting jazzed. So we're going to cut out some conversation about the look ahead. I do think we did want to highlight Bills versus Lions this weekend in the NFL. A few other games that are kind of really interesting in that league as well include the Steelers and Eagles, 2 pretty dominant teams at the top of the list. And then, Brandon, you talked about it, the NBA Cup semifinals on Sunday. So we'll probably do more of a look back next week on how those games played out. Moving forward, we're going to love to kind of do a bit of a look ahead, probably bring some guests in. But all that to say, we'll move into our final segment to wrap up the show here, which is cheering from the press box. And the title of this was a result of our professor at Centennial College. One of the cardinal sins is to cheer in the press box if you're covering a game as a journalist. So we decided, let's not break any rules and let's just cheer from the press box, from our own computers, from our own mics in our own little space. And basically what this means is like, is there a team that we're just cheering for? It doesn't have to be a team that we're necessarily generally cheering for, as we mentioned at the beginning of the pod, but is there just like a feel-good story? Is there something that we're just pumped to see, or just sort of make sports great? Like, what situation are we really interested in? This time, Brandon, maybe we go to you. Who are you, either player, team, league, what the case is, who are you cheering from the press box for?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to contradict myself you guys will find out I will do a lot, but I am rooting for cheering from the press box for Giannis Antetokounmpo to win the NBA
Okay.
Cup. Now I know I just talked about the Rockets and I'm excited about them. Great young team, upstart. We'll see where they head. But for me, I'm a big Giannis guy. Been a big fan of him, especially the way his career's played out. Um, One of the few homegrown stars in the NBA to have a championship, and I'm excited to see him getting back to an MVP type of season. Averaging over 32 points a game, 11 rebounds, over 6 assists. So that's really putting him back in the conversation in terms of one of the best players in the NBA. It's going to be hard to compete with that guy, in Denver. He's playing very well in Jokic. But for me, Giannis is a fantastic player in the NBA, and I want to see him an incredible season would be potentially winning the NBA Cup and then maybe doing some damage in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs, potentially getting to another NBA Finals. Them and the Boston Celtics look like two of the better teams in the East. There are some few other contenders as well, but for me, I just love watching him play. He's such a force out there, and he can really move around. And he's just someone that I've rooted for a little bit, for no other reason than I think he does it the right way. So I'm excited to see what happens as we get into the further rounds of the NBA Cup this weekend.
How do you not vote for him? Or how do you not cheer for Giannis? He's awesome. He's awesome. Yeah. I'm with you. Justin, go for it. Who do you got? Who do you got this week to cheer for?
Listen, I got two hockey players I'm cheering for. I know I stayed with hockey this week, but two hockey players I'm cheering for. Do you guys want to take a guess? Because I'm saying two hockey players here.
Lane Hudson and I
Patrick
don't know,
Laine.
man. Patrick Laine, yeah.
No, no, you're not even
Okay.
close.
Oh
Not
wow.
even close.
The St. Louis Blues pair of Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. They
Okay.
were offer sheeted this season or this off season by St. Louis after being in Edmonton. High draft picks by Edmonton. And St. Louis went in there and they made great offers, in my opinion, that Edmonton, like not overpaying that much, but just overpaying enough that Edmonton couldn't justify paying these guys or matching the offer sheet. Um, and listen, they're having breakout years. Philip Broberg has 2 goals, 12 points in 17 games. I know he was injured for a 10-game stretch there, but he has looked really well on the back end, especially playing bigger minutes now. I know that's what he wanted. Um, Edmonton didn't really want to give it to him until last year during the playoffs, and you would have thought this year in Edmonton he would have progressed and probably helped out some of their issues on defense right now. But he's in St. Louis and he's killing it to start the year. And then Dylan Holloway, a big, I want to say musky guy that has 10 goals, 19 points in 29 games this year. He has been really good to start the season. He's having his best offensive season statistically yet. And he brings a big body to that lineup that adds with like a Jake Neighbors where they're just going to be physical and they're going to lay the body on you. And a new head coach in Jim Montgomery who likes to get the best out of all of his players. He is going to thrive underneath Montgomery, I think. And Dylan Holloway is just going to continue to get better. So I'm cheering for those two this weekend.
I like that. Yeah. And Broberg had a bit of injury problems earlier this year. So it's nice to see him back and obviously putting in work. Doug Armstrong's gotta feel good if obviously
He's
having
got to
been
Very much
feel
hurt the
so.
last
really
few
good.
weeks.
Got to
Very.
feel
Yeah.
really good.
He put his what's on the table and they worked out. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool to hear. Pretty cool to see. I will stray away from either league and I'm going to stick to the NFL as we sort of talked a little bit about earlier in this pod. And I'm going to go with Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, boys, because honestly, this team and this franchise has just been they're like the Buffalo Bills from yesteryear. Like nobody's giving them opportunities. They are obviously earlier this year, Bryce Young looked like a shell of himself. He hadn't lived up to the 1-1 pick in last year's draft. And obviously just wasn't an ideal candidate for holding a starting job moving forward, to the point where he was kind of being the laughing stock of the league in some instances and not being able to see over his O-line since the past few weeks. And since he's been brought back from the depths of this backup position, he's actually played fairly well. Now in the last 3 games, he has lost all 3, but I think it's would be crazy to say that he hasn't improved the way that he's sort of his presence in the pocket. He's not making these blind decisions. He's able to kind of read some defenses a little bit more. And even when teams like the Kansas City Chiefs will blitz him, he's able to at least stay calm and make the throw rather than panic and run out of the pocket or lose the ball or whatever the case is. So talking about the team sort of finishing in the bottom feeder section last year, they had a pretty much a gauntlet over the last 3 weeks in terms of teams they've played in Kansas City, then Tampa Bay, and most recently the Philadelphia Eagles. They lost, I think the worst loss was by 6 points. So all games were within 1 score. They lost in overtime 2 weeks ago to Tampa Bay, and Bryce Young just looks better. Looks a little bit more like a starting quarterback. I'm really interested to see what the Panthers do moving forward with him. I don't think they have to make any rash decisions. I think he's still signed for another 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, at least 1. I think he had a 4-year deal for his entry level. But one real cool stat that I saw today was that so the Panthers are actually playing the Cowboys this weekend, and it's the first time, I might be making up the timeline, but I believe it's the first time in 3 years that the Carolina Panthers are actually favored. So I believe they were -3 against the Cowboys this weekend, 1 o'clock start on Sunday, which is crazy. If you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you're down pretty horrendous. But I mean, it's just a testament to how Bryce Young and his team is playing, despite some of even the injuries that they've sustained earlier in the year. So I'm excited to see what that team does. And honestly, I think that team just deserves a W this weekend, especially against America's team. So
I mean, I was very impressed with the way that he's played, the last few weeks, especially, but ever since coming back after being benched, like that's not easy to do. And for a young guy to come back and kind of show some of that swagger, you're right. I would pick them to beat the Cowboys. Why not? Like they have just as much chance to win that game as I think the Cowboys do, even though they played pretty well on Monday night. But yeah.
Listen, if they decide this offseason Bryce Young is not the answer, they are making a horrible mistake. And it's just another case of failed or making a quarterback or labeling a quarterback as an NFL bust way before you even give him a chance to develop and give him the right tools around him. Because Bryce Young is a very good talent, and I think he's going to be a very good quarterback in this NFL, in the league.
Let's hope. And honestly, watching CJ Stroud have a couple of like suspect weeks is kind of like maybe the Carolina Panthers, like it's way too early to make this call, but like maybe they weren't so crazy picking Young. Like maybe CJ Stroud just showed flashes early. I think he's still an unbelievable quarterback with a great arm, but we'll see. So yeah, 33 games in a row was the streak of the Panthers being underdogs. So kind of nice to see them. It's
nuts.
It's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Last thing, boys, we'll wrap up. Anthony Stolar's lower body injury. He's not finishing this game against the Ducks this Thursday night when we're watching. So that's just a breaking news story. That's super exciting. I'm so pumped. I don't know. Just one of those situations, boys. Here we are.
The Vezina Trophy winner plays.
And the season's over.
What are we 30 games?
Yeah, but 30 games in.
I was surprised to see him getting the not back-to-back, but 2 starts in a row with the back-to-back this weekend. So, I mean, maybe that's just the way it goes. But
yeah, maybe they should have put in Wall instead of the back. I don't know. Maybe it's just a tweak.
Let's hope for the best, and we'll see how it goes this weekend with the back-to-back.
He'll be day-to-day for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Don't bring that up. I've been traumatized already. Good show today, guys. For the first episode of the Second Look Sports Show, I'm Alex Mandarino, joined by Brandon Brown, Justin Arenburg, Sarah Matt, our producer. Thank you guys for listening. Like, subscribe. We're on Apple Music. We are on Spotify, hoping to get on a couple other platforms moving forward. Watch on YouTube. And I guess we'll see you next time.